A mother arrived dirty at her son's graduation. When the son took the microphone, all the guests were shocked by what he said. Before the story, leave a comment below letting us know which city you're watching from. Enjoy the video. The city of Seattle was waking up slowly that morning, with the sun filtering through the tall buildings and flooding the narrow streets, where life was already pulsating. Among voices negotiating products and laughter echoing, Lucy walked, carefully balancing the tray full of sweets she made a point of preparing with care. Each candy, each coconut treat, and each small delicacy carried her effort and the hope she placed daily in raising her son, William. She followed her path through streets she knew like the back of her hand, greeting old acquaintances, serving loyal customers, and smiling at those passing by, even as fatigue weighed on her shoulders. Life hadn't given her an easy road. After her husband's death, when she was still carrying William in her womb, Lucy found herself alone and with the immense responsibility of supporting her son. It was there, on the streets of Seattle, that she found her strength. She started selling sweets, and every day, with each coin, she brought home sustenance and a bit of dignity. While Lucy faced the beginning of yet another work day, William, in his pristine uniform and worn-out backpack, walked towards school. He was tall for his age, with sharp eyes and a posture that reflected determination. Though he appeared to be an ordinary teenager, his heart bore the maturity of someone who knew the hardness of life. The school he attended was prestigious, attended by Seattle's elite, and he was there only thanks to a scholarship he had earned through impeccable grades. Despite the school's amenities and the quality of the teachers, William dealt with the harsh reality of not truly belonging in that environment. The corridors were cold, and the respect most students had for each other did not extend to him. He knew that, to many, he was just an intruder, someone who was there not because of a right to belong, but because of the concessions of a system that opened doors for only a few. Therefore, he kept to himself. He spoke little about his personal life, avoiding any mention of his mother and her work. He knew some would look down on him even more if they knew that Lucy, unlike the mothers of other students, didn't drive a luxury car or carry expensive handbags. She sold sweets from sunrise to sunset to ensure they had the basics they needed. William had already learned to deal with the looks and implicit comments. But that morning, as he arrived at the school gate, he saw two figures that immediately made him clench his fists: Nathan and Matthew, heirs to two of the wealthiest families in town. William knew them well. Since the beginning of the school year, the two made it a point to remind him how different he was from them, mocking his worn backpack, his old cell phone, and any detail revealing his circumstances. William walked past them in silence, trying to ignore their muffled laughter, but soon he felt Nathan approaching, placing himself beside him as if they were old friends. "Hey, William, have you thought about replacing that prehistoric cell phone?" said Nathan, holding a modern device in his hand. "Or are you waiting for it to become a museum piece?" Matthew, who approached right after, let out a forced laugh. "Maybe he's waiting to get a new model as a Christmas present. Oh, but I remember you don't believe in Santa Claus, do you, William?" he said in a tone of false innocence, looking at Nathan, who laughed. William took a deep breath. He had already learned not to react, even if their comments felt like small cuts accumulating and starting to hurt. He looked at the ground and murmured something they couldn't hear. "What did you say?" Matthew taunted, leaning in to listen. "Nothing," William replied firmly, looking up. "I just said I have more important things to do." The short, cold response seemed to surprise the two, who looked him up and down before letting out one last laugh and walking away. But William knew that wouldn't be the end of it. Nathan and Matthew had an almost visceral need to prove their superiority, and William, with his silence and calm, seemed to challenge this logic they held dear. Throughout the day, William tried to stay focused in class, taking notes on every word from the teachers, absorbing all the content that could lead him to a different future. Even with the difficulties and differences, he knew this was his path, his chance to repay Lucy's sacrifices. During breaks, he sat alone in a corner of the courtyard, always engrossed in a book or reviewing some subject. It was there, in moments of silence, that he found the strength to ignore the comments and jokes. At the end of the day, while his classmates waited for their drivers in luxury cars, William packed his books into his backpack and walked to the bus stop, where he would wait for public transport. The way home was long, but he used this time to reflect and make plans. He dreamed of one day repaying his mother for everything, ensuring she could rest, proud to see that her effort had been worth it. Arriving home, he found Lucy in the kitchen, preparing dinner with a tired smile. When she saw him enter, she put down the wooden spoon and went to him, gently touching his face and asking, with an anxious look, how his day had been. "It was good, Mom," he replied, trying to hide any trace of fatigue or sadness. Lucy looked at him with tenderness and pride. She knew in her heart that her son carried a special strength, a resilience that went beyond the daily struggles. And in that look, they shared a silent understanding that every effort, every sacrifice had a purpose. So that night, as the city of Seattle fell asleep, Lucy and William sat down to dinner together, in silence, but connected by a love that overcame poverty and pain. For them, hope was renewed every day, and together they knew they could face any adversity, even without knowing what the future held. William's days at school had become a true test of endurance. Each week, Nathan and Matthew devised new ways to humiliate him, making him feel the weight of the inequality that separated them more and more. They seemed to be seeking some reaction, a sign that they had managed to hurt him, but William, with a strength he didn't even know he possessed, remained silent and resilient, enduring the impact of their humiliations. One particularly difficult afternoon, Nathan decided it was time to entertain some classmates. While William was seated in the courtyard, calmly reading a book, Nathan approached with Matthew, feigning polite interest. "Hey, William, what are you reading?" Nathan asked with a fake smile. William looked up suspicious, but answered calmly, "It's about quantum physics. It's related to the course I want to take." Nathan raised his eyebrows and let out a mocking laugh. "Quantum physics? So you want to be a scientist now?" And before William could respond, Matthew added, "Imagine the genius here, with that ridiculous phone and a backpack that looks like it's falling apart. Quite ambitious for someone who barely has a place to lay his head." The group around them laughed, and William felt the heat rise to his face, but he held back. He knew that any reaction would only give them the satisfaction of getting what they wanted. With an effort that seemed to draw strength from the depths of his soul, he turned his eyes back to the book, pretending their words hadn't affected him. Nathan walked away with Matthew, frustrated by the lack of response. But even without reacting, William felt the weight of prejudice in every word he heard. In the courtyard's silence, he wondered how long he could hold out without giving in to anger, without allowing their words to open the wounds he was trying to ignore. When he went home, the questions and insecurities followed him. Lucy, always busy with work, had no idea what he was facing daily. For her, the mere fact that William was studying in a prestigious school was a source of immense pride. Lucy often talked to the neighbors about the bright future her son would have. This sincere hope kept her going every day, made her get up before the sun and face the weight of the sweet tray with a smile that masked the fatigue. William, on the other hand, kept the battles he faced from her. He couldn't bear the thought of her knowing the truth, the disdain and scorn his classmates held for him. He knew Lucy would do anything to protect him, but he didn't want her to carry this burden. For him, silence was a way to protect her, a way to honor her daily sacrifice. The weeks passed, and William remained committed to his studies. His teachers soon noticed his dedication, and while they rarely commented, they recognized the young man's effort. One of his teachers, Mr. Carter, who taught mathematics, was the one who got closest to him. Carter, a man with a deep voice and piercing gaze, noticed the subtle signs of exhaustion on William's face. He often called him to talk after class, asking questions about his performance and offering help whenever he could. In one of these conversations, Carter asked William about his future plans. "I want to study physics, sir," William replied with a conviction that surprised the teacher. "And you know that's going to require a lot from you, don't you?" Carter asked, watching him closely. William nodded without hesitation. "I know, but it's what I need to do. It's not just for me." He hesitated but continued. "It's also because of what my mother has done for me up to this point." Mr. Carter looked at him silently for a moment, understanding the depth of that answer. Although he didn't know the details, he sensed that William's journey was more profound than any of his classmates could imagine. He then placed a hand on the young man's shoulder, a silent gesture of support, as if to say, "I believe in you." Despite Carter's help and understanding, William couldn't avoid the weight he felt. Humiliation was a shadow that followed him, growing with each taunt, each stifled laugh as he walked down the hallways. He began to realize that no matter how hard he tried to stay strong, Nathan and Matthew's words were leaving deep marks, creating cracks in his determination. In the quiet of his room, he allowed himself to falter when he finally felt safe enough to hide his emotions. It was there, far from prying eyes and judgments, that William confronted the void, wondering if he could endure until the end of the year, if his efforts would one day be rewarded. He wanted to believe it would all be worth it, that the promise of a better future would be real. But doubts began to circle his mind like a subtle poison. Lucy, on the other hand, lived in a world completely oblivious to this pain. She saw him as the brilliant and dedicated young man who would bring pride to the family, someone who would fulfill all the dreams she had never had a chance to realize. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, she casually commented, "Oh, my son, I can't imagine the day you'll graduate. How happy I'll be. I don't even know what I'll do with so much emotion." William, who had been lost in his thoughts, was brought back by his mother's voice and gave a slight smile. "It'll be a great day, Mom," he replied. "Everything I do is so that day will come." He felt the truth in his words, but at the same time, a sadness mixed with that feeling. He knew that reality was much harsher than Lucy could imagine. Each day, his classmates' contempt became a constant reminder that, to achieve his dreams, he would have to face a battle that went beyond academics. He needed to fight against prejudice, humiliation, and the voices that insisted on telling him he didn't belong in that world. Nonetheless, William didn't want to give up. Despite the heaviness he felt in his heart, he knew his greatest victory would be to endure, to move forward, and to honor his mother's sacrifices. Thus, he promised himself, night after night, that as long as there was hope, he would stand firm, finding in difficulties the motivation to be stronger than any prejudice trying to stop him. Graduation was approaching as an inevitable milestone, a dream nurtured by Lucy since the day she learned William had won the scholarship. For her, that event wasn't just the end of a phase, but the realization of a promise for the future. So she began saving meticulously, tightening the already tight budget. She refrained from buying certain items for herself and started selling even more sweets, thinking of every detail of what she privately called the big day. Lucy decided that, for that special moment, she deserved at least a new dress. In the simplicity of her life, she rarely bought anything for herself, but William's graduation was an event she wanted to honor, both for herself and him. Over the weeks, she saved every extra penny, imagining herself, perhaps for the first time in years, dressed for a celebration. It was William's triumph, but it was also hers. At home, while Lucy made her plans in secret, William experienced the anticipation of the event in a restrained way. He knew he would be the class speaker, a responsibility and an honor he had never imagined achieving. He wanted to dedicate the speech to his mother, to her strength and determination, but at the same time, he was hesitant. He wanted to express his gratitude and honor her subtly, shielding her from the curiosity and disdain his classmates might feel if they knew about their life. For him, the speech was a way to give back, to say, even between the lines, that everything he had achieved was because of her effort. One morning, however, William's excitement drew unwanted attention. He was talking to Mr. Carter about the responsibility of being the speaker, while Nathan and Matthew watched from a distance, suspicious. The two exchanged glances of complicity, intrigued by the sparkle in William's eyes. "Look at that. The scholarship kid is going to be the speaker," Nathan commented to Matthew in a venomous tone. Matthew laughed, shaking his head. "He must think he's the star of the school. Who would have thought, huh? All that's left is for him to want to give an inspiring speech." Nathan, however, had something else in mind. He watched William with calculating eyes, noting the importance he seemed to place on the moment. It could only mean one thing. It was the perfect opportunity to finally humiliate him in an irreparable way. So, the two began to plan, with malicious smiles, the most cruel way to ruin William's most important moment. Meanwhile, Lucy continued her work routine, selling sweets with renewed determination. On one of her few days off, she decided to visit a simple clothing store, where she carefully looked at each dress, searching for something beautiful but not attention-grabbing. After all, she wanted to be well-dressed but discreet. After some time, she chose a simple, delicate dress that made her smile at the thought of it as her celebration attire. On the eve of graduation, Lucy carefully arranged the dress, placing it gently over the chair in her room. She looked at it with emotional eyes, as if holding a piece of the dream she had built. That clothing symbolized more than an event. It was the consecration of a life of sacrifices. On the day of the ceremony, William's anxiety was mixed with cautious joy. When he woke up, he found his mother, already dressed and ready for the event, adjusting the details of her outfit with a shy smile. She looked different, more confident and proud. William's heart filled with gratitude at seeing her. He knew what that moment represented for her. "You look beautiful, Mom," he said, smiling. Lucy, moved, touched his face, trying to hide her tears. "And you, my son, are more than ready. I'm sure it's going to be an unforgettable day." They walked to the school together, but before entering the building, Lucy encouraged him to go ahead. She wanted to let him shine in that moment and preferred to enter discreetly. William agreed, exchanging a final look of support before walking away and entering. As Lucy walked through the streets leading to the graduation venue, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in a long time. However, right around the corner, she was surprised by two familiar figures, Nathan and Matthew. They were leaning against a car, watching her with inquisitive and mocking looks. Nathan was the first to approach, with a smile that soon revealed itself to be cruel. "So, you must be the mother of our illustrious speaker, right?" He looked her up and down with disdain. "I see you made an effort to dress up for the event." Lucy, not understanding the hostility, tried to walk away. But Matthew also approached, laughing. "You know, it's a shame. With that simple dress, you might stand out more than you'd like. Don't you think this kind of event doesn't quite suit you?" Before Lucy could respond, Nathan, with a sudden move, lightly pushed her. The gesture was enough to make her lose her balance, and the light-colored dress she had saved so much to buy ended up stained by a puddle of mud. Startled, Lucy looked at her ruined dress, while the two young men laughed, satisfied with the damage they had caused. Her face flushed with shame and pain, and she felt the tears threaten to fall. All she wanted at that moment was to disappear, to run away so William would never know about the humiliation she had just suffered. After they left, she took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, seeking strength to continue. She thought about giving up, about going back home and avoiding letting her son see her in that state. But remembering William's effort and pride in her, she decided to move forward, even with a heavy heart. She walked to the ceremony hall with hesitant steps and slipped in discreetly, trying to hide in one of the seats at the back. While William climbed onto the stage, preparing to give his speech, he was unaware of what had happened to his mother. However, as he looked toward the back of the hall, his eyes met hers. Lucy was seated, with the dress stained and her face marked by suffering. In an instant, William understood everything. The school hall was elegantly decorated for the graduation ceremony. The aligned chairs, the lit stage, the discreetly arranged flowers, everything seemed designed to create an atmosphere of celebration. For many, the event symbolized a rite of passage, the beginning of a new phase full of opportunities. However, for William, upon seeing his mother in the back of the hall, with her dress stained and her face filled with sadness, that moment transformed into something much bigger. It was a fight for justice and dignity. Lucy was there, seated among the other guests, trying to hide the marks of what had happened. She kept her head down, her gaze fixed on the floor, but even in that state, her presence radiated a silent strength. From the stage, William observed his mother, feeling a mix of anger and deep sadness. He knew how much that day meant to her, how she had dreamed of that moment, and now, because of Nathan and Matthew's cruelty, she found herself humiliated, marked by mud both on her dress and in her soul. William's heart beat fiercely. He held the speech he had prepared so carefully, with eloquent phrases and words chosen to impress the audience. But, at that moment, the text meant nothing. His hands trembled, and the knot in his throat felt unbearable. He couldn't continue with the planned speech, not in front of Lucy's suffering. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, he knew what he had to do. William left the speech on the podium and with a trembling voice began to speak. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration, a day when I should, proudly, thank everyone who supported me and helped me reach this point. His voice echoed throughout the hall, and a reverent silence filled the space. But today I realize there's something much more important that needs to be said, something that can no longer be hidden or silenced. The curious looks of the guests and students turned towards him, while Nathan and Matthew, seated among the others, began exchanging uncomfortable glances, still not understanding what was about to happen. William took a deep breath again and continued, looking directly at his mother, who now lifted her head, surprised and apprehensive. Today, I want to talk about the person who made it possible for me to be here. The person who, from the very beginning, showed me what true strength and determination are. My mother, Lucy. Her name resonated through the hall, and a slight murmur spread through the audience. My mother, who is here today, is the reason behind everything I've achieved. She dedicated every day of her life to give me a chance for a future. She works from sunrise to sunset on the streets of Seattle, selling sweets so I could be here, so I could have this opportunity that so many here take for granted. William's voice began to gain strength, fueled by emotion and the need to say every word with the truth he had kept hidden for so long. Lucy's eyes filled with tears, but now they were tears of pride. Every word of his was a reaffirmation of everything she had sacrificed. And, even though she is the strongest and most dignified woman I know, he continued, looking into the faces of his classmates, My mother was humiliated by some people here, people who think they have the right to trample on others simply because they have more money or status. William looked directly at Nathan and Matthew, his eyes steady and defiant. The two froze, and the shock on their faces was evident. Today, before arriving here, he continued, my mother was the target of cruelty by two people who decided that, because she is humble, she didn't deserve to be in this place. She was pushed into a puddle of mud, and her dignity was disrespected simply because they decided she doesn't belong in the same environment as them. Those two people are Nathan and Matthew. Their names fell like a bomb over the audience. Shocked looks and murmurs filled the hall. William felt the heat of justice pulsing in his words. He knew he was exposing the two young men directly, but at that moment, there was no room to soften the truth. This was no longer just a personal issue. It was a cry for justice. For years, I endured the humiliations, the disdainful looks, the hidden laughter in the hallways, he confessed, looking at the audience in general. All because I believed that one day my effort would be the answer, that if I continued studying, honoring my mother, these attacks would lose their importance. But today, I realize I must not remain silent. No human being deserves to be treated with contempt, and my mother, the most honorable and strong woman I know, does not deserve to carry this pain for something she did not choose. A heavy silence dominated the hall. The impact of William's words was clear on the emotional faces of those present. Some teachers discreetly wiped their tears, and many parents looked at their children, perhaps reflecting on what they had just heard. Lucy, now with tears streaming down her face, watched her son, feeling an indescribable pride. William had spoken for her, but also for all those who struggle in silence. Nathan and Matthew were utterly defeated, with no reaction, sinking into public shame. After a moment, someone started clapping, and the gesture was followed by others. In seconds, the entire hall was on their feet, applauding William and Lucy, recognizing the courage and truth exposed there. It was more than a graduation speech. It was a lesson in humanity, courage, and the true value of people. The applause seemed to last forever. At that moment, William was no longer just the scholarship student. He was the voice for all who face prejudice and exclusion, and his mother, once invisible to the eyes of that elite, was now an honored and respected presence. When the applause finally subsided, William stepped off the stage and walked toward Lucy, who hugged him tightly, with no need for words to express her pride. Together, mother and son had turned a moment of pain into a triumph of dignity and truth, leaving a legacy of respect and empathy that would echo in that school and in the hearts of everyone present. The aftermath of William's speech was immediate and overwhelming. The day after the ceremony, the matter wasn't limited to the school. Parents, teachers, and students spoke about the profound impact of the young man's words. William's testimony had challenged many of the veiled prejudices circulating among students and their families. Everyone wondered how such a cruel situation had gone unnoticed for so long. The consequences for Nathan and Matthew were swift and severe. The public shame they faced was just the beginning. Upon returning home after the graduation, both families confronted them. The parents, once proud, now felt an unbearable weight of shame, realizing that their own children had become symbols of an arrogant and inhumane elite. For Nathan, the punishment was harsh. His father cancelled the much-anticipated exchange program to Germany and forced him to work at the family factory. "You're going to understand what it means to value work and respect people," his father said firmly, leaving no room for protest. As for Matthew, his graduation gift, a luxury car he had eagerly awaited, was revoked, and his parents decided he would begin to cover his own expenses. Both were forced to face the reality of their actions, experiencing the consequences of their deeds for the first time in their lives. For William, however, The suffering inflicted on his mother could not be dismissed as a mere prank. The pain he felt seeing her publicly humiliated was a deep wound he knew would take time to heal. After talking with Lucy and hearing her say she just wanted to forget what had happened, he realized that the humiliation they had endured couldn't simply be ignored. Determined, William sought legal help and formally filed a lawsuit against Nathan and Matthew, accusing them of public humiliation and moral damages. The trial brought the case back to public attention. The emotional testimonies of William and Lucy made many present, including teachers and some of Nathan and Matthew's parents, realize the depth of the cruelty committed. The defense tried to argue that the young men's actions were merely teenage pranks, but William's lawyer firmly refuted this line of defense, arguing that such humiliations crossed all boundaries and should be seen as intentional abuse. At the end of the trial, the judge delivered a sentence that surprised everyone. Matthew and Nathan were sentenced to 6 months in prison and ordered to pay compensation to William's family. The decision aimed not only to punish, but to make both reflect on the impact of their actions, a punishment that the families, though ashamed, accepted in silence. For Nathan and Matthew, the sentence felt like a sudden fall from a reality where they had never known the real consequences of their actions. In the months that followed, their time in prison was a transformative experience. Without the comforts and privileges they were used to, Nathan and Matthew were forced to reflect on the arrogance and cruelty they had nurtured. The solitary routine and isolation of their cells allowed for a slow process of self-reflection. In the silence, both began to recognize the extent of their mistakes and understand that their actions were not mere pranks, but behaviors that had caused real and deep pain. Gradually, genuine remorse began to emerge, and the desire to seek forgiveness was no longer just a matter of social responsibility. It became a sincere wish to repair the harm caused. They didn't know if they would be forgiven, but for the first time, they felt a genuine need to try. When their sentence ended, Nathan and Matthew were different. They now bore the mark of regret and a deeper understanding of the pain they had caused. Together, they decided to seek out Lucy and William to ask for forgiveness, hoping, even uncertain of how they would be received, that they could one day make amends for at least part of what they had done. Lucy and William, now in a more stable phase of life, had established themselves in a small cafe that she had opened with the compensation money. The business, born from so many sacrifices, brought new joy to Lucy's life and had become a symbol of the resilience and strength she had built alongside her son. One morning, as she was organizing the counter, Lucy looked up and saw 2 young men entering, hesitant and visibly nervous. Nathan and Matthew stood before her, and for a moment the past and the pain surged, making her heart race. William, who was at the counter, immediately recognized them and stopped, unsure of what to do. Nathan took a step forward, his face carrying an expression of humility that Lucy had never thought she would see. "Lucy, William, we came to ask for forgiveness." Nathan's voice was low and restrained, but it carried a weight of sincerity that was impossible to ignore. "We know what we did was unforgivable, but somehow we need to say that we're sorry. We've spent a long time reflecting on the harm we caused, and we just want you to know that we truly regret it." Matthew, with his head bowed, added, "We don't deserve your forgiveness, but we hope you understand that we're willing to make amends however we can. We've learned just how cruel our actions were, and we only want to show that we've truly changed." Lucy looked at the 2 with teary eyes, surprised by the sincerity she saw there. William, on the other hand, remained in intense silence, still unsure of what he felt. The pain he and his mother had endured wasn't easy to forgive, but at the same time, he knew the desire for change he saw in their eyes was real. Exchanging a look with his mother, William sought the support and understanding that had always guided him. Lucy gave a gentle nod, showing that she was willing to give them a chance to prove their transformation. William then took a deep breath and responded with quiet firmness, "I accept your apology. I know nothing will erase what happened, but I hope you've truly learned the meaning of respect and dignity. May this experience make you better people." Relief showed on Nathan and Matthew's faces, and they thanked them profoundly. From that moment, their relationship would never be one of friendship, but it would be one of respect, a silent bond marked by shared experience and genuine remorse. As they watched the young men leave, Lucy and William exchanged a look, aware they had taken an important step in leaving the past behind. Not only had they reclaimed the dignity they deserved, but they had also proven that the love and strength they shared could overcome any pain. That morning, as the sun bathed the small cafe in light, Lucy and William continued with their lives, carrying with them a newfound peace that was, finally, rightfully theirs. Their painful journey had turned into a lesson in respect, transformation, and redemption, leaving a powerful message of hope and forgiveness, not only for them, but for everyone around them. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought about the story. See you in the next video.